Welcome to Casual Friday. Hi, I'm Roxanne Richardson, and this is my weekly Casual Friday podcast. If you'd like to jump directly to a specific point in the video, you can tap or mouse over the video playback area of your screen, which will reveal the chapter titles and starting points of each section. In this week's Casual Friday, I have tidbits. I have a finished project. I have some updates on ongoing projects, so let's get started. A week or two ago, I told you guys in a tidbit about this artist who had made these ceramic items that were textile related, like bits of clothing, and some of it was knitted. And there was no information about how those items were created. They were created from real pieces of textile. The artist had those. But the way that I had interpreted the explanation was that the clothing was there and they were trying to reproduce it as authentically as possible. But I didn't know exactly how it was done. So I got a link from Susan on Instagram. Your recent video had a tidbit about ceramic knitted items, and I was interested because I was recently gifted a similar piece at the Abel Gallery in Stoughton, Wisconsin. I was told the artist knits a vessel with some sort of fiber, then soaks it in porcelain clay, allows it to dry, and then fires it in a kiln. The fibers incinerate, leaving only the porcelain. I don't know if this is the same technique used by the artist you mentioned, but I thought it might be of interest to you. It's really cool to see what somebody can do to transform knitted fabric into something as hard and durable as ceramic. This next tidbit came to me from Ms. Well Done on Instagram. It's a tea towel, and it's produced by Becca Hall, but they're being sold in an online shop called daughterofashepherd.com. So I'll leave links to that. It's 20 words, and the explanation is, I first heard this method of counting sheep many years ago at a sheepdog trial in the Yorkshire Dales, and there are local variations across the north of England, although it's rare to hear it being used now. The system goes up to 20, and once you reach a score, which is 20, a stone is moved from one pocket to the other, and counting starts at yan again. So there's different words for the numbers 1 through 20 than we would normally use in English. But I thought it was an interesting thing. So if they're counting sheep, they'll use their 1 to 20. Once they get up to that, they have a rock, move it to the next pocket, and then they start up to 20 again. So then they can figure out how many groups of 20 that they have when they see how many stones are in this other pocket. So this month, October, is American Archives Month, apparently. So in celebration, the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan, where I grew up, and I have been to that museum before, they are having a knit-along, and they are using the Priscilla War workbook as the inspiration for their knit-along. So they have an Instagram account, and people who are wanting to do this knit-along can post pictures and tag them and that sort of thing. If you're not interested in the knit-along, that's fine. They do have some nice images of different pages of that particular book and some suggestions for patterns that people might want to make from this particular book. So they haven't posted the entire book online, but it is from World War I, so here in the United States, that is outside of copyright protected work, meaning it's in the public domain. That also means it's available in its entirety as a downloadable PDF on archive.org. So I'm going to leave links to the post from the Henry Ford Museum, as well as a link to the archive.org, which has tons and tons of knitting manuals especially from the 19th century and early 20th century are available on archive.org. Priscilla was the name of a ladies magazine. I believe it focused, I don't know if it was like a general ladies magazine that had like needlework in it, or if it was specifically a needlework magazine. I certainly have seen other knitting patterns from Priscilla, like their monthly magazine. But anyway, they published this World War II knitting pattern book, and it can be a lot of fun to see how the patterns are presented. They tend to be very terse. I was particularly intrigued by the item that they call the muffler and cap, I believe is what they're calling it. And it's the one that's photographed at the top of the page, where it looks like the guy's wearing a hat that is just basically has big wide ponytails that can cross over in the front. If you're interested in seeing the instructions for that, you can do that through either of the links that I'll put down below. Some of you who watch my channel have been with me for years, and others are not only new to my channel, but might even be really new to knitting. So I wanted to give you a little history of the channel and then tell you what I'm planning on doing through the end of the year, because I'm thinking about changing things just a bit. So the history of this channel is that I started it in 2007, but it wasn't a knitting related YouTube channel. It was a way for me to share videos of my kids with their grandparents who lived out of state. But in 2009, I started posting knitting related videos, and I was teaching at a local yarn shop, and I had a column on Ravelry called Ask a Knitter, where people would ask questions. So sometimes I had videos that were related to that. So it was really, the videos tended to either be reference material for the classes I was teaching in person, or additional reference materials for the articles that I was writing. So between 2009, 2012, I posted 30, 35 technique videos that were typically fairly short in length, maybe about 5 minutes. And a lot of that had to do with just the constraints behind video uploads at the time in terms of resolution, file size, upload speeds, what YouTube allowed people to upload, that kind of thing. In 2017, I decided I really wanted to regularly upload technique videos. And so starting in February of 2017, I began uploading a new technique video every single Tuesday. At the end of 2017, I was happy to continue doing that, but I felt like I had more I wanted to say about knitting that wouldn't fit into a video where I'm demonstrating a very specific technique. So I decided to try a second video. I didn't know what it was really going to look like, what it was going to be like, how long I would even have things I thought I could say. I had no idea. My husband knew. He said, what are you talking about? You could talk about knitting for hours. You're not going to run out of things to say. He knew. I didn't. But I really enjoyed the two different types of videos that I was uploading. So 2018, I was doing 2 per week. 2019, I was doing 2 per week. And 2020, I was doing 2 per week. Beginning of 2021, I was feeling like 2 per week was a bit much. And I was still happy to do Casual Friday every week, but I felt like I wanted to reduce the frequency of Technique Tuesday. By that point, I had at least 200 technique videos on my channel and about 150 Casual Friday videos on my channel. So this year, I've been doing a Technique Tuesday video just about every other week. Now that we're into the fall knitting season, I am feeling like I want maybe to increase the amount of Technique Tuesday videos I do, but I also know what kind of a grind doing 2 videos per week can be. So what I think I'm going to do is Technique Tuesday videos more frequently than every other week. That might mean 3 weeks out of 4. There might be periods where I absolutely want to do four videos 4 weeks in a row. But on the weeks where I'm uploading a Technique Tuesday video, Casual Friday is going to be shorter. I have typically aimed at a 40 to 45 minute length for Casual Friday that just feels right to me. But it is too much when I'm also doing a Technique Tuesday video. And that's in large part because that's what I do on Friday and that's what I do on Tuesday. If I'm making a video, that's what I do. And with technique videos, that often means I am knitting swatches or experimenting or figuring out how I'm going to demonstrate in the couple of days leading up to it. I'm not spending all day of each of those days leading up to it on that kind of activity, but it is occupying time and brain power when I'm doing that. So I think just to be able to maintain doing 2 videos in any given week, I really need to reduce the amount of time that I spend on the Casual Friday videos. Instead of showing you everything that's going on in my knitting life, I will be a little bit more selective about what it is that I show you. I might choose 1 or 2 things to show you. I might answer questions that you guys have had that have come up, that sort of thing. So let me know what you think about that. If you would prefer a longer Casual Friday every week and less frequent Technique Tuesday videos, or if you'd be happy with Casual Fridays being shorter if it meant that there was a Technique Tuesday video posted that week. Let me know. I'm curious to see what you think, because I'm not 100% sure about how I feel about it or what I think of it. I think it's going to take a little while for me to just to see how it goes and then make a decision going forward. When I learned to knit socks back in 2005, 2006, I really threw myself into learning as much as I could about different approaches to sock knitting. 4 double-pointed needles versus 5 double-pointed needles, magic loop versus using double-pointed needles, cuff down, toe up, peasant heel, short row heel, heel flap and gusset. I tried all different kinds of things. I really liked it. And then eventually I discovered what my fit issues are for sock knitting, and I settled into cuff down sock knitting because that was really the way that I could knit socks and know that I could get a good fit, whether they were for me or for somebody else, and using their measurements. I really knew how to modify a sock to get a good fit. So like 5 years ago, I really started investigating those sock heels that didn't fit me naturally. And how could I modify peasant heels and short row heels so that they did fit me? And then how could I take that knowledge and share it with other knitters who have similar fit issues? How could I teach them to identify where their fit issues are going to be, and then depending on what kind of heel or toe they want, explain to them, what process that they can go through to figure out how to modify those socks. So this year I decided that I wanted to tackle toe up sock knitting, because I really put it to the side in that first year I learned to knit socks. And I didn't like the process. I found that there was really even less information for how to modify for a good fit with toe up socks compared to cuff down socks. And I just, didn't see the need for it. I do like to try to get past my prejudices so that I can understand when something might be useful, even if I don't like it. And to be comfortable enough with that process that I can use it easily without it being aggravating. So like I have my preferences for how I knit sweaters, the construction process, whether it's, I prefer knitting flat and seaming things just because I like smaller pieces. And it's this, sort of a psychological thing. Oh, I've got this piece done. Now I've got that piece done, rather than having all of the stitches on the needle at the same time. And I don't like all the weight on my lap. So, I have preferences like that. And I prefer knitting the body of a sweater bottom up to knitting it top down for a couple of reasons. But the main one being I really like complex stitch patterns. And this part of the sweater has the most complex shaping. And I prefer not to start the sweater with establishing complex stitch patterns and complex shaping. I would prefer to split that out. Not everybody's the same way, and not everybody enjoys knitting complex stitch patterns. So typically I would choose to knit a sweater bottom up flat and seam it. And this sweater is knit top down seamlessly because there was a specific element that I wanted to incorporate into the sweater. This is something I designed myself. You could say I over designed it, but I wanted this cable pattern to end right here and come up to the neckline. I wanted this neck to be this shape and size. I wanted the armholes to be this deep. I wanted all of this shaping to be exactly what it was. And in order to do that, to get this piece right here and have the upper body shaped in the way that I want it and to have the depth of the armholes and all of that, I really needed to do it top down. And so I will say that I didn't enjoy that, but I knew enough about how that construction worked to make it happen. So it was not enjoyable to establish all the complex stitch patterns at the same time that I was doing all of the shaping for all of the pieces at one time. Not enjoyable, but I really liked the result. So I was willing to do that. So that's what I have been looking for in the toe-up sock construction. It isn't that I don't think anybody should like toe-up sock construction. It's that I didn't like it early on. There were some roadblocks to getting me to like it early on. But now that I know a lot more about how feet are shaped and how to manipulate knitting to my whim, I was willing to try it again and try out a variety of different things. So I wasn't so interested in knitting toe-up socks that use the heels, the same heels that you can knit cuff down. Like there's some heels like peasant heels and short row heels that can be knit in either direction exactly the same way. And I'd already solved that problem for cuff down. I'm not interested in using that for the most part in toe up. So I want to use other types of heel constructions, other types of toe constructions, and combine them together. So that's what I've been doing. So this week or last week, sometime this week, I finished this pair of socks that I'd started earlier in the summer. And so I wanted to go through in the overhead and kind of talk to you about all the different pieces that I used in the construction of this sock, all the different elements, and why I did what I did. And so let's go to the overhead. So let's start with the yarn. This yarn is from Chasing Rabbits. That's an independent dyer out of Texas. I bought the yarn in Santa Fe when we were on our road trip this summer. The yarn is 100% New Zealand Polworth wool. There's no nylon in the sock. And so this is one of the experiments that I am trying at the same time I'm doing toe up, is to, let's see if this is the one that I can pull it apart. I can see that I use this, I wanted a contrasting color. I reinforced the sock with a yarn that has some nylon on the inside. I did a video on this a few weeks ago. So I wanted to, I'm going to be comparing these two socks as I wear them. I'm going to check how well they're wearing as I go. So that's the yarn. The stitch pattern is from a cuff down sock pattern. It's free on Ravelry. I'll link down below. It's called Petty Harbour. So again, that's a cuff down sock, and I knit this toe up. So I took the stitch pattern from that sock, but then I rearranged it a little bit. It has a 4-stitch repeat. I'll put the repeat on the screen so you can see. It's a 4-stitch repeat, so every other round is just knit. And then you have one round where it says knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1. And then the fourth round is knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. So what you end up with is a column of garter stitch, a knit column, a column where there's a purl bump every 4th row, and then another column of knit. So again, this is a 4-row repeat. So the way that this pattern is laid out the stitch pattern is laid out on the instep for the cuff down sock is not symmetrical, so that the instep doesn't end up symmetrical. And what I wanted to do was to have, on both sides, I wanted to have that garter stitch column on this side and on this side framing the instep so that it was a symmetrical pattern. So that meant I needed a multiple of 4 stitches plus 1. So this sock has 56 stitches, and instead of having 28 stitches on the instep, I have 29, which means I have 27 on the sole. That's how I use that stitch pattern. And again, I was using it toe up. So the toe that I use for this, you might be able to see there's some little bumps in there. Those are knit front back increases. I was experimenting with a round toe, which I quite like for cuff down, and I wanted to reverse it. Instead of working rounds that have decreases, I have rounds that have increases. So this type of toe, there's a short version and a long version. I used the long version. You'll decrease 8 stitches in a round, and then you'll work a number of rows with no decreases. Then you do another decrease round, and then you work some more rows, but 1 row fewer than you did before. If you're decreasing, the decrease rounds get closer and closer together. If you're increasing, they get further and further apart. So when I knit the first sock, I reversed it by using knit front back increases. And then later in the summer, as I was doing other socks, I tried it with make 1 increases instead and decided I liked that better. I mean, it's perfectly fine, and the purl and the little bumps of the knit front backs are not a big deal on such a dark sock, especially one that has all of these purl bumps in it anyway. I've done videos on the round toe in both directions. There's one for cuff down as well as toe up. So let's look at the heel. So this is a heel flap and gusset construction, but what you see is this is a stockinette heel. So this is one I got this recipe for this heel from Modern Daily Knitting, and I think the recipe, the article on the recipe was written by Kate Atherley. So the way this heel is constructed is you work a gusset, so you have increases for a while, and then you work this heel turn. And the way the heel turn is worked is exactly like the first half of a short row heel. So it uses all of the stitches and it forms this heel, and then you turn the heel and you're working back and forth on the flap and decreasing a stitch with one of the gusset stitches back and forth until you are back down to your original stitch count. So this is it was an interesting construction. I thought that's, clever to use that short row heel turn, but it does mean that you're going to end up with a fairly short heel flap, which meant I couldn't do it in heel stitch because that would have condensed it even more. So it's really important for me that if I'm doing toe up, that I use a bind off that is very stretchy. If I'm working cuff down, that the cast on has to be really stretchy. So for me, cuff down, I can use a long tail cast on, because you can add the kind of amount of stretch that you need. If you're doing it properly, that edge can be as stretchy as you need it to be. So what I do for toe up is I use what's called a half hitch bind off, also known as outline stitch bind off, but it gives you the same look as the smooth side of a long tail cast on. And it's plenty stretchy for around the cuff, but more importantly, it's plenty stretchy to go around my heel diagonal, which is bigger than where my leg is, where the cuff hits me. I have this long heel diagonal, so this sock needs to be able to stretch past that heel diagonal very easily, and it certainly does. So I've done a video on this particular way of binding off as well. It's a type of sewn bind off. It's not the bind off known as the sewn bind off. It is a type of sewn bind off, and it's very easy to do. I couldn't believe how easy it was to do. So I thought I'd give you an update on my breed study for hand spinning. It's a 30 breed study. I bought 1 ounce each of 30 different breeds. It came in a set from Wool Gatherings on Etsy. And I've been going through that. And my goal with this is just to get back into spinning, because I haven't been a spinner for very long. And the past couple of years, I've done so little spinning. I really wanted to get myself kind of back into it and get to the habit of it. So I've been knitting on average 1 or 2, sometimes as many as 4 breeds in a week, and most weeks 1 or 2. So last week I spun this. This is what's called South Down. It's the original of the down breeds. So down refers to the downs in the UK where these breeds originated. It doesn't refer to like goose down or that kind of quality of down, like an undercoat type of thing. It was so springy. It was all combed top is normally ready for a worsted spinning, a short forward draw type of spinning. And if you want to do something like a woolen spun, which is like the long draw, you would normally card that wool. This was so springy. I thought this seems like it could be spun using long draw from the combed top, which I thought was interesting. So I spun it that way. And I wasn't, I'm not always, I don't have a lot of practice with the long draw. I'm getting better with the short draw, more consistent, not as consistent with long draw. And I think it isn't possible to be as consistent. So I did spin it into 2-ply, and I was kind of on one of these, I was really underwhelmed by this yarn, and then I soaked it in the hot water and put it in the cold and soaked it in the hot and did the whacking on the kitchen counter. And it's still not like a perfect yarn. I don't think that's possible for me at this point, but it's way better than it was before I finished the yarn. And it's still so smushy and springy. This turned out better than I thought, and I'll show you in the overhead what this looks like up close. The next breed I'll be spinning is Suffolk. So this is the South Down, and this is what the yarn looks like. You can see that I'm not super consistent, like some places that are, I'm just not. So it'll be interesting to see once I get to the end of the breed study and I knit all of these up into swatches to compare the inconsistency in the yarn with what it looks like in the actual swatch. But this is just really, it's got a lot of spring to it, a lot of boing to it. So that's really fun. I also wanted to show you guys this. I had a friend who went to Alaska. She's a new knitter this year. She joined our guild, and she's been in our Zoom knitting groups, and she's mostly been buying yarn from the Goodwill. And then she was going to Alaska, and we said, you have to get some Qiviut. You have to get some Qiviut. So she went to this, I think it's pronounced Umingmak, musk ox cooperative. So the indigenous tribes up there have the right to collect the fiber that falls from the wild musk ox in the spring as they shed their undercoat, this kind of downiness, and this is called Qiviut. So they have it spun into yarn, and they make items to sell, and they do sell a small quantity of yarn. They'd never sold the fiber though for spinning. When I had bought yarn from them before, that wasn't a possibility. And so she went to the shop, she bought different items, she bought all kinds of things from them, and she wanted to get me this little sample of Qiviut to try spinning with. And they saw how much other stuff she bought, and they just gave this to her for free. So I've been reading up on how to spin this, and if I should card this first, or if I should just try spinning it as it is. I don't know. I might card it first. I have some tiny little cards that I could use, and it's supposed to be spun very finely. And so I'm going to experiment with that. Well, she said, they sell spinning fiber now. And so I went onto their website and I looked, and I bought an ounce of it and had it shipped to me. So I bought this. It was $45 for 1 ounce, so it is expensive. But like I said, it should be spun really finely. And I wanted to support them as well. They're cooperative. But it's the same as what my friend Heather brought me back. So I'm really excited about this particular fiber to get good enough at my spinning that I will feel confident about spinning. This is a motivator for me. So I'm really looking forward to this. Well, that's it for this week's Casual Friday. If you have any comments or questions about today's video, or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below, or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.